Well, welcome to this week's episode of Tuesdays with Thomas. In our last video, we began looking at Thomas's 5 ways to demonstrate the existence of God. The first way is his argument from motion, or what we would call the argument from change, showing that there must ultimately be an unchanged changer, and that is God. His second argument, the second way, is going to be an argument for God as the first cause. But in order to understand this argument, we need to know a little bit more about what Thomas has in mind when he speaks of God as the first cause. Normally, when we think of the first cause, we think probably of first in the sense of first in time. Like, for example, first grade. That's the first grade before the second grade. Something that is prior to everything in time. But that is not the kind of first cause Thomas has in mind. Just as Aristotle did not believe that the earth had a beginning but had always existed, Thomas Aquinas did not believe he could prove that the world had a beginning. He believed it on the basis of Scripture, but he didn't believe that he could prove it. And yet even Aristotle believed that God was the first cause. And that's what Thomas is going to argue here in the second way. Well, if God is not the first cause in time, in what sense could he be the first cause? Well, the answer is by looking at another way we think of the word first, and that is when we think of the First Lady. The First Lady is not the first woman who ever lived. She's not first in time, but she is first in rank. In other words, she is the primary woman in the sense of she ranks above everybody else. Primary in importance. And that's the idea behind God as the first cause, both in the philosophy of Aristotle and in Thomas Aquinas. He is the first cause, not in the sense that Aristotle thought the world had a beginning, or that Thomas thought you could prove the world had a beginning. The issue is not how long has the world been here. The issue is what gives anything that has causal power its ability to make things happen right now. And what this argument says is that it is ultimately God who is the first cause in rank and importance, who gives everything else the power to make things happen right now. Now, bear in mind something we talked about in the previous video with regard to certain kinds of series, because it's going to come to play an important role in Thomas's argument in the second way. Remember, we used the illustration of when a finger knocks over the first domino in a sequence of dominoes. Philosophers call that kind of sequence an accidentally ordered sequence or series, because the hand is accidental or incidental to the future succession of dominoes. Once it has flicked the first domino, that hand doesn't have to do anything else. The person could just go take a nap. The person could die. The person could just disappear from the planet, but those dominoes will keep knocking each other over. The hand can stop moving. The dominoes will continue to move. Now that's in stark contrast to another kind of series. And think about this kind of series. Here you have someone who's going to paint. So he has a long handle, and then an attachment, and then a roller pad, and then paint, or maybe in this case mud, to do some drywalling. Now, in this case, if that painter moves, as long as he moves, the handle and the attachment and the roller pad will apply the paint. But if the painter stops moving, everything else will stop at the same time. This is a simultaneous series of causes, or what in philosophy is called an essentially ordered series, meaning the painter is essential for the entire process. Unlike the finger, which flicks the dominoes once and then is irrelevant or accidental to future dominoes falling over, this painter is essential every step along the way. When he stops, everything else stops. Now, in this illustration, the painter is the first cause, not in the sense of time. We're not talking about time here. This handle of the paintbrush could be infinitely long. This paint job could be taking an infinitely long amount of time. Time is irrelevant here. What matters is rank and importance, primacy. And in terms of importance, this painter is first in rank because the handle, the attachment, the roller, the pad, and the paint are all secondary in the ability to do anything. None of them have the inherent power to make anything happen. They all derive their power to make things happen from the painter. He is of primary importance. He is first in rank in terms of causing things to happen, making things happen. That's what Aquinas is going to mean when he talks about God as the first cause. All right, so with this background in mind here now, let's take a look at the argument for God in what Thomas calls the second way. He says this: the second way is from the nature of the efficient cause. In the world of sense, we find there is an order of efficient causes. There is no case known, neither is it indeed possible, in which a thing is found to be the efficient cause of itself, for so it would be prior to itself, which is impossible. A couple of points to make very quickly. Number one, Thomas is saying that nothing can cause itself. So here I have a cup from Burger King. This cup is made of plastic. This cup could not cause itself, because to cause itself, it would have had to have existed in order to then cause itself. And that means it would have to have existed before it existed. And that's impossible. The other thing you should know is, if you are familiar with the writings of Thomas, you know that there's some debate among experts on Aquinas as to exactly which way Thomas is going with this argument. Does he have something a bit more metaphysical in mind about essence and existence, or is he really basically reiterating and expanding the first way? I think he's doing the latter. He's reiterating and expanding the first way. But in a future video, I'll explain more what all that rigmarole is about essence and existence. In any event, he's just introducing for us the basic term of efficient cause. Moving on. Now, in efficient causes, it is not possible to go on to infinity, because in all efficient causes, following in order. So right here we have our key expression, following in order. That's Thomas's way of cluing us in that he is not talking about the finger flicking one domino which then knocks all the other dominoes over. Not that kind of series. What he's talking about here is the kind of series demonstrated by the painter who has the handle with the roller attachment, with the roller pad, with the paint. It's an essentially ordered series. All right, so that's what he's talking about here. And then notice that Thomas uses three kinds of terms here. He says there is the first, intermediate, and ultimate cause. So in our illustration, the painter was the first cause. The intermediate causes are the handle, the attachment, the roller, and the roller pad. And then the ultimate cause, sort of the final part of it, is the paint or the mud going up on the ceiling. So he says this: now in efficient causes, it is not possible to go on to infinity, because in all efficient causes, following in order, the first is the cause of the intermediate cause, and the intermediate is the cause of the ultimate cause, whether the intermediate cause be several or one only. Now, to take away the cause is to take away the effect. Basic principle: every effect has a sufficient cause. Therefore, if there be no first cause among efficient causes, there will be no ultimate nor any intermediate cause. So in other words, you take away the painter, what happens to all of the intermediate and ultimate causes? That's exactly right. They disappear as well. The painter stops painting, everything else stops having any power to cause things to happen. But if in efficient causes it is possible to go on to infinity, there will be no first efficient cause. Why does Thomas say that? Well, if anything goes on to infinity, is there a first? No, because by definition, any series that has an infinite number doesn't have a first, because first is the terminating point. So by definition, this point is obvious. Neither will there be an ultimate effect, nor any intermediate efficient causes, all of which is plainly false. So if it's infinite, there can't be a first. But as we just pointed out, if the painter goes away, what happens to the efficient causation of the handle, the roller, the pad, and the paint? They disappear as well. Therefore, it is necessary to admit a first efficient cause to which everyone gives the name of God. Bear in mind, again, that these are abbreviated summaries of theological points that Thomas will expand upon later in the Summa, when he talks about why it is that this first cause must be the God of the Bible. Now, what I want to do is lay out for you in point-for-point fashion a restatement of this argument that I hope will make it even more clear. And I want to begin with this passage in Psalm 104 and verse 14, which says, "You cause the grass to grow for the livestock and plants for man to cultivate." God causes the grass to grow. With that simple observation, consider this argument. Number one, some things are caused. The grass is caused to grow. Number two, the things that are caused cannot cause themselves. The grass can't cause itself to grow. Number three, the things that are caused must be caused by something else, the soil, the rain, the sun. Point four, but these various causes need something to make them happen, to cause them. The sun, rain, and soil need causes as well. Number five, if this series of causes that also need causes was infinite in number, that means it would never stop, by definition. Point six, if it never stopped, the series of causes that needed causes would not have a first cause. Because if it never stops, that means there's no beginning of the series, no first in the series. Point seven, if there is no first cause, there would be no source from which the series of causes that also need causes can derive its power to make things happen. So here's an illustration. You're a private on an army base and you want permission to take weekend leave. So you're going to ask whoever ranks above you if you can have permission. And each person in the chain of command must derive the ability to make that leave happen from whoever ranks above them. So you ask your sergeant, hey, Sarge, can I get weekend leave? He says, well, let me go check with the lieutenant. Lieutenant says, well, let me go check with the captain. Captain says, let me go check with the major. Major says, let me go check with the colonel. All right, question. If the chain of command is infinite on your army base, are you ever going to get your weekend leave? No, you're not. If that's an infinite series of causes that need causes, you'll never get the permission to leave because no one has the inherent authority. No one has the final say. There's no commanding officer. Well, what we're calling the commanding officer with final say in that illustration is what we're calling the first cause that has the inherent power to make things happen rather than the derived power to make things happen in the first cause argument. Point number 8 then. But if the series of causes that also need causes had no power to make things happen, we would see no effects. In the case of the army base illustration, we would see that you would never ever get your leave on the weekend. Point 9, and yet we see the effects of this series all around us. So now let's say that you have a buddy who's on another base, and you go to visit him, and he is going to put in permission to take leave on the weekend himself. And the same rules apply. He's going to ask his sergeant, and his sergeant will ask the person who ranks above him, and so forth. And the next thing you know, he's packing up his bags to take off for a weekend leave. Question, is the chain of command on his base finite or infinite? It's finite. How do you know that? Because somewhere along the way, that chain of command terminated with somebody who had the inherent power to make it happen for him to get permission to leave. How do you know that? Because you see the effect of it. Namely, he got permission to get his leave. We see the effects of a causal series all around us where there must have been a terminating point in a first cause that did not have to derive its power, but simply had the inherent power to make things happen. Where do we see that? All around us. We see it in things as simple as the grass growing. Therefore, there must be a first cause. So that is what Thomas Aquinas calls the second way. Bear in mind, there are 3 more ways in the 5 ways, plus many explanations that Aquinas will give for why the one identified as the unchanging changer and the uncaused cause, or a first cause, why this one is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I just hope that the things we're talking about here are whetting your appetite to learn more about these ancient but venerable arguments for the existence of God.